It started as an ordinary day of adventure for 5 college friends exploring the scenic Stillhouse Cave in Alabama. None of them had any experience with caving, but the beauty of the area drew them in. As they walked near the entrance of the cave, one of the friends, Curtis Mills, ventured inside alone. Moments later, something went horribly wrong. A sudden sound echoed from deep within the cave, and what happened next would change everything. Stillhouse Cave in Alabama is a natural treasure located in the northeastern part of the state, a region known for its rich cave systems. Alabama is famous for its caves, especially in the Northeast, which is considered a quote-unquote hot spot for caving in the United States. The state's unique landscape, with its beds of carbonate rock, provides the perfect conditions for caves to form over time. This area is home to many caves, but Stillhouse Cave stands out as one of the most fascinating. It offers a glimpse into the underground world and the geological history of the region, making it an exciting destination for cave explorers and nature lovers alike. The cave is located in a beautiful setting surrounded by scenic natural features such as small streams, steep slopes, and wet weather springs. The surrounding area is part of the Duck River watershed, known for its rich biodiversity and stunning landscape. While exploring the Stillhouse Cave area, visitors can enjoy the peaceful sound of running water and the beauty of the nearby Stillhouse Hollow Falls, which cascades 75 feet down into a deep hollow below. The waterfall creates a picturesque scene that adds to the overall charm of the area. Inside Stillhouse Cave, the cool, damp environment supports unique cave formations like stalactites and stalagmites. These formations have been created over thousands of years by the slow dripping of mineral-rich water. The cave is also home to a variety of cave-dwelling animals, including bats, insects, and other small creatures adapted to life in the dark. The cave provides a glimpse into the delicate ecosystem that exists underground, where many species rely on the cave's constant temperature and humidity to survive. Exploring Stillhouse Cave offers visitors the opportunity to experience Alabama's natural beauty from a different perspective. The cave's impressive geological formations, combined with the lush surrounding landscape, make it a destination worth visiting for anyone interested in nature and adventure. Whether you're an experienced caver or simply someone looking to enjoy a peaceful day in nature, Stillhouse Cave provides a unique and memorable experience in the heart of Alabama's cave country. On May 4th, 1985, a group of 5 college students visited their fellow student John Graham at his home near Stevenson, Alabama. Like many young people, they were full of energy and eager to explore. The students had heard stories of a nearby natural wonder, a large, horseshoe-shaped sinkhole with walls towering up to 50 feet high. The sinkhole was a scenic and popular spot with locals, and a stream flowed over the high side of the sinkhole, feeding into Stillhouse Cave. None of the students were experienced cavers, and none of them had any caving equipment, but that didn't dampen their sense of adventure. They were just excited to spend the day outdoors, discovering the natural beauty of the area. The cave wasn't far from John Graham's house, only about a quarter-mile walk through the woods. When they got there, the group excitedly talked about what they could see. Now, even though none of them had ever been inside Stillhouse Cave, they had heard that it was a relatively easy cave to explore. The cave's walk-in entrance was wide and welcoming, 15 feet across and 10 feet high. To them, it didn't seem like the kind of place that would pose any danger. Little did they know, the cave concealed a hidden peril just out of sight. The students arrived at the sinkhole at around 5:15 p.m. and scattered around the falls, taking in the stunning scenery. The air was cool and fresh, and the sound of the cascading water echoed through the sinkhole, creating a peaceful atmosphere. One of the students, Curtis Mills, who was in his early 20s, excused himself, saying that he needed to use the bathroom. Well, without giving it much thought, he walked down the side of the sinkhole and made his way into Stillhouse Cave. His friends didn't think much of it at first, as they were all busy enjoying the area in their own ways. A few minutes later, John Graham was standing near the entrance to the cave when he heard an unsettling sound, a loud slap coming from inside the cave. Concerned, he called out to Curtis, but there was no response. His voice echoed back at him from the cave's walls. Now at first, Graham thought that Curtis might be playing a prank on them, trying to spook them by staying silent. But after calling a few more times and still getting no reply, his concern grew. Something didn't feel right. What none of the students realized was that just inside the entrance of Stillhouse Cave, the cave floor took a dangerous turn. The entrance may have been easy to walk into, but a short way inside, the path dropped off suddenly into a 30-foot freefall pit. The cave's smooth streambed floor might have looked inviting, but it hid this deadly drop-off from view, especially as the natural light outside began to fade with the late afternoon. Realizing that something might be seriously wrong, Graham ran back to the house with one of his companions to grab a flashlight. When they returned and shone the light into the cave, their worst fears were realized. Curtis Mills was lying at the bottom of the pit, motionless and soaked by the spray of the waterfall. He was unconscious, and it was clear that he had suffered a serious fall. Graham's heart pounded as he raced back to the house to call for help. Within minutes, the Stevenson police were alerted, and soon, a full-scale rescue operation was underway. Several ambulances arrived on the scene, along with officers from different law enforcement agencies, members of the Scottsboro Fire Department, and the highly trained Sand Mountain Rescue Team. They knew that time was of the essence. Curtis was lying at the bottom of the pit, exposed to cold water, and his condition was rapidly deteriorating. The first paramedic reached Curtis at 7:10 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the initial accident. By this point, Curtis was severely hypothermic. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low, and he was unconscious, teetering on the edge between life and death. The paramedic quickly assessed his injuries. Curtis had suffered a fractured skull and an injured hand during the fall, but the most immediate threat to his life was the cold. His body temperature had plummeted to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, well below the normal 98.6 degrees, and if they didn't act fast, he wouldn't survive much longer. The rescue team worked quickly and efficiently. They carefully evacuated Curtis from the bottom of the pit and transported him to the waiting helicopter. By the time the helicopter lifted off, it was already getting dark, and the team knew that the clock was ticking. The helicopter flew Curtis to a hospital in Huntsville, where he arrived at 9:02 p.m. Doctors were already standing by, ready to begin life-saving treatment. Curtis was in critical condition, but thanks to the quick actions of the rescue team, he had a fighting chance. After being rescued from Stillhouse Cave, Curtis Mills was immediately treated for severe hypothermia. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low during the hours he spent at the bottom of the pit, exposed to the cold spray of the waterfall. Although the rescue team had saved his life, Curtis's recovery was far from over. His skull fracture and hand injury were serious. He was admitted to the neurological intensive care unit, where doctors closely monitored his condition. For 10 days, Curtis remained in the ICU as he began the slow process of healing from his injuries. His skull fracture and other wounds were serious, but the real concern was the potential damage to his brain due to the head injury and the hypothermia. After those critical 10 days, Curtis spent another 11 days in the hospital. Even though his condition was improving, it was clear that his recovery would take a long time. The fall had left him with lasting physical and mental challenges. During the summer, Curtis underwent intense physical therapy to help him regain his strength and coordination, as well as speech therapy to address the issues caused by his head injury. Despite the progress he made, the road to recovery was long and difficult. 6 months after the accident, Curtis was still not fully recovered. While he had made significant improvements, the trauma of the fall had lasting effects. One of the most unsettling aspects of the experience was that Curtis had no memory of the accident. He couldn't recall what had happened in the moments leading up to the fall, or how he had walked into the cave without noticing the dangerous drop. He had likely stepped over the edge without realizing what lay ahead. The excitement that had filled the group of college students earlier that day was replaced by a sobering realization of how quickly things could go wrong. None of them had been prepared for the dangers that Stillhouse Cave held. They hadn't thought to bring any caving equipment because they had assumed that the cave would be safe enough to explore on their own. It was a mistake that almost cost Curtis his life. The rescue team that saved Curtis's life was highly trained and well-equipped for these kinds of emergencies. Their quick response and expertise made all the difference in getting Curtis out of the cave alive. However, not all cave accidents end well. Many people who explore caves without the proper training or gear find themselves in situations that they can't escape from, and they can die. Curtis was very lucky to have survived such a serious accident. Many others who find themselves in similar situations aren't as lucky. His experience shows how dangerous caves can be, especially when you don't have the proper knowledge, equipment, or training. Curtis survived because of the quick response of his friends and the rescue team, but it also showed the importance of being careful and prepared when exploring nature.
The Lost River Cave sounds like a place from an Indiana Jones movie. It also looks like one. Let's face it, there aren't a whole lot of caves on this planet that you can explore on a boat, or that have been featured by Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's a unique place great for families to visit, but it also boasts a dramatic history and, on rare occasions, has even turned deadly. Lost River Cave is located in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Bowling Green is the third largest city in Kentucky, but the nearest big city to it is actually Nashville, Tennessee, since Bowling Green sits quite close to Kentucky's southern border. Aside from this cave, the biggest thing Bowling Green is probably known for is the National Corvette Museum. It's not really a place that draws millions of visitors every tourist season. The existence of Lost River Cave within its city limits is something of an anomaly. Most cities don't get to have such an unusual natural landmark just a few minutes away from the local shopping mall. The entrance to Lost River Cave, which is literally across the street from a Popeye's chicken restaurant, is among the largest cave entrances in the eastern United States. The cave itself is really a cave system, which stretches out for 7 miles underground. As the name suggests, the cave has a fairly wide river running through it. For a long time, the river was also thought to be insanely deep. When geologists first began trying to measure the depth of the water, they used something called a plumb bob, a small, pointed weight on the end of a string. Although I haven't read any direct accounts of this, there's a good chance that the first time they tried it, they ran out of string. They didn't need just a few feet of it, or even just a few dozen feet of it. To their surprise, geologists ended up needing hundreds of feet of string to measure the depth of the Lost River. After some adjustments to their string supply, they finally managed to get the plumb bob to hit what they thought was the bottom of the river, at an astonishing 437 feet below the surface. They were measuring at a section called the Blue Hole. Blue holes are essentially sinkholes, and they appear in other places around the world, such as the Bahamas and the South China Sea. The fact that there was a blue hole inside a cave in the middle of the US that appeared to be nearly 450 feet deep helped catapult Lost River Cave to international fame. In fact, this extraordinary depth was the main reason why Lost River Cave ended up being featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not. But, disappointingly, readers should have chosen not to believe this one. It was later discovered that these insane measurements were wildly inaccurate. But they were wildly inaccurate for an interesting reason. The blue hole in Lost River Cave actually connects to another river, one that runs underground. So, technically, the blue hole is only 16 feet deep. The plumb bob was just getting swept underground, making it seem like it kept descending and descending. This was a clever trick by Lost River Cave. No one seemed to figure it out until long after it had become a famous tourist destination, and many are still on the fence about the true depth. This apparently includes the government of Kentucky, whose Energy and Environment Cabinet still says on its website that the blue hole's depth is supposedly 437 feet. No matter how deep it is, the blue hole is still an amazing feature of the cave, and it's not the only reason the cave is an amazing place to visit. Today, on a boat, it takes roughly a half hour to tour the whole cave, because that's how much there is to see and explore inside. The cave also has a fascinating history to learn about. People were storing food and using the cave for shelter as long as 10,000 years ago. Around the turn of the 19th century, a watermill was built here, and, for a long time, it was the only underground watermill in the United States. During the Civil War, Bowling Green was Kentucky's provisional capital as part of the Confederacy. During the Union Army takeover, Union soldiers used the cave as a camp, as many as 40,000 of them. According to local archaeologists, you can still see the names of Union soldiers carved into the walls. My favorite part of the Lost River Cave story is what happened during Prohibition. According to local legend, although this has never been proven, the cave was used by bootleggers to make alcohol illegally. After Prohibition, and this part we know for sure, the cave was turned into a nightclub. Yeah, no joke, a nightclub. The club hosted a number of famous musical acts, including the NBC Orchestra. Billboard described it as the only air-conditioned nightclub at the time because it was so naturally cool inside. For reasons that could only have to do with the general public being no fun, the club went out of style and closed in the 1960s. The cave went into a period of decline, filling with trash. It wasn't until the 1990s that an effort was made to refurbish the cave and open it for tourism. Paying to take a boat tour is generally the way most people experience Lost River Cave today. However, there are those who try and explore the cave alone. You're not supposed to do this. The property is privately owned, so you have to avoid getting caught just to get inside. Despite the obvious intrigue, I, of course, cannot recommend that anybody try this. Not only is it dangerous, it's also illegal. But I can tell you the story of what happened when one man tried to do it. His name was Danny L. Vaughn Jr. Danny grew up in Warren County, the same county where Bowling Green is. He was born in 1990 and spent 30 years of his life living near Lost River Cave before he seemingly decided enough was enough. He was going to try and explore the cave. I say this in speculation. As far as I've been able to uncover, nobody really knows for sure what Danny's motivation was. Danny reached the age of 30 during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Stores were closed, families were forced to stay home. Needless to say, tours of Lost River Cave were canceled indefinitely, and there was no way, at least no legal way, to get in. Danny had a daughter. He also had a decent-sized family full of siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and cousins. There's no real way to know, but I think we can safely assume Danny's experience of COVID-19 was much like it was for most people. Stressful, tragic, highly disruptive, and after a while, full of boredom and restlessness. I guarantee you, Danny L. Vaughn Jr. is not the only person in Warren County who thought about sneaking into Lost River Cave during lockdown. What sets Danny apart is that it appears he went out and actually tried to do it. As I described earlier, one of the many things that makes Lost River Cave unique is its central location. As a matter of fact, it is right off the side of the highway. This poses both advantages and disadvantages for sneaking in. For a massive cave with a 7-mile river inside it, the place is remarkably easy to get to. You could even stop across the highway at Lost River Liquors and grab some beer on your way in. Being right next to the highway is also pretty ideal for making a quick getaway if needed. At the same time, being in such a central location means there are people around most of the time. Of course, due to COVID, there were no tours happening and the cave itself was empty, but the whole surrounding area wasn't. Danny may have planned meticulously for this, or he may have had no plan at all. None of us really have any idea. All we know is that there was at least one witness to the event. At around 6:30 p.m. on March 11, 2020, Danny L. Vaughn Jr. was seen climbing over the fence and entering Lost River Cave. The witness who saw him called the police immediately. Why they were so quick to call the authorities must have one of two possible explanations. The first is that the person called because they saw Danny fall into the water. This would explain why they were so quick to dial 911. They thought he had an accident and was probably hurt. The second explanation is that the person who called was simply calling because he was trespassing and they wanted to report it. This begs the question of whether Danny fell or not. Frustratingly, local news reports seem to conflict on this. The local NBC station reported that officials on the scene said Danny jumped over the fence and fell into the river. But the local ABC station quoted an officer named Tim Gray, who said, "We don't know if the individual jumped or fell from the fence, but we are aware of witnesses who did see him climb over the fence and did not see him resurface." Well, which is it? I've never been to Lost River Cave, but based on the multitude of photographs and video footage available online, I have not seen anything I would describe as a fence. There are certain sections inside the cave where there are railings, low metal beams along the river's edge. But there doesn't appear to be a fence that a witness from outside the cave could see Danny climbing over. But in May 2020, there might have been a temporary fence blocking entry to the cave, which had been shut down due to COVID just a month earlier. If I had to guess, that's probably what Danny climbed over and what the witness reported to the police. If that's true, it means Danny most likely didn't fall. He was just obviously sneaking in. What Danny got up to while he was in there is something we'll never know. The sad and mysterious ending to the story is that he somehow drowned in the river. If you frame the story like it was a madman who leapt over the fence, fell, and drowned, well, then it doesn't sound so peculiar. But if you dig a little deeper, as I think you and I have, we see that it probably wasn't that simple. Danny probably didn't fall. And if he had fallen, he wouldn't have landed in the water, because he was probably climbing over a temporary fence that was blocking the opening of the cave, which is a bit of a distance from where the river actually sits. But how did Danny drown? Most of the river is only 4 or 5 feet deep. Sure, it's supposedly possible to drown in an inch of water, but if you're a full-grown male with enough physical agility to leap over a fence, how likely is it that, sadly, like so many cases, with this, we simply don't have enough information? It's possible no one does.